Hello everyone. Thank you for joining us for this 7th edition of the daily webinar organized by Le Réseau Village. We are very happy to welcome you today. Merci à tous et à toutes de nous rejoindre pour ce 7e webinaire. On est très heureux de vous voir nous rejoindre avec le Hub Luxembourg et son partenaire Constanze von Rheinbaben sur la communication en temps de crise. Just a little recap of the rules for this webinar. Please make sure that your webcam and microphone are off. Also ask your questions on the little Q&A section. We will make sure that you can share your tips and your comments on the Converser window. You can, of course, speak English, but also thanks to Constance's abilities in language, you can ask in French and Italian. And Amélie will then moderate the questions. Vous pouvez donc tous poser vos questions sur la section Q&A. Merci de partager vos tips et vos commentaires sur la partie conversée. Constance essaiera de répondre aussi aux questions en français et en italien pour ceux qui préfèrent utiliser le français et l'italien. Voilà, merci à tous. Je vais laisser Amélie Madinier du Hub Luxembourg présenter Constance. Thank you to everyone, and I will let Amélie Madinier, mayor of Hub Luxembourg, present Constance.
Hello everyone, and thank you Edwige for introducing this session, and thank you to all of you for joining it. I'm in charge of the Hub at Luxembourg, which is the village by Sea in Luxembourg, and I've met Constance a few months ago. Constance has 20 years of experience in the finance and energy industry, and she has decided to set up her company 5 years ago, which is called Rich Impact Speaking, and which aims to support business leaders and managers in having more impact with audience during speeches, pitching session, press conference, and so on. And what she does is she uses the voice, the breathing, the body language, facial expression, and of course the storytelling to help them doing that. So I really hope that the 5 experience you had doing that for top management will help you to define your communication this time. On the top of that, as you just told us, Constance is more than bilingual, she's multilingual, she speaks 5 languages. So feel very free to ask your question in French, Italian, German, English, Spanish, and she will try to answer in your language or in English. I hope you will appreciate as well because she's very enthusiastic and she has lots of energy, and I'm quite sure that we will go through the screen. Très rapidement en français, bonjour à tous, je suis la responsable du village by Sea au Luxembourg. J'ai rencontré Constance il y a quelques mois. Constance, elle a 20 ans d'expérience dans le et dans l'industrie énergétique, et il y a 5 ans, elle a monté sa société qui s'appelle Rich Impact Speaking et qui a pour objectif d'accompagner des managers et des directeurs pour qu'ils aient plus d'impact auprès de leur audience quand ils prennent la parole, soit dans le cadre de discours, soit dans le cadre de conférences de presse, de pitch. Voilà, donc elle fait ça depuis 5 ans. Elle insiste sur le travail de la voix, de la respiration, du body language, sur les expressions faciales, et puis bien entendu, elle retravaille leur storytelling avec eux. Donc j'espère que ces nombreuses années d'expérience sauront vous aider à redéfinir votre communication en temps de crise, s'il y a besoin de le faire. Ce qui est top avec Constance, c'est qu'elle parle 5 langues, donc comme Edwige l'a dit, n'hésitez surtout pas à poser vos questions dans votre langue maternelle, soit l'italien, l'espagnol, l'allemand, le français, l'anglais. Et Constance est quelqu'un de super enthousiaste et énergétique, et c'est ça qui nous a bien plu et qui nous a donné envie de partager son expérience avec vous. Voilà. Constance, I give you the word right now.
Merci.
Thank you very much again.
Edwige aussi, et tout le monde, bienvenue. Welcome everyone, and it's a pleasure and honor to be here in these difficult times, which make it the more important for all of us to stay in touch. And this is a fabulous initiative by Le Village, and so thank you very much for the invitation. This is a little bit of a different topic than what I usually do, as Amélie has just told you. Still, it relates to communication, and that's why I think I can provide you with some information, and I hope I will enrich you with some of what I will be telling you. In these fast-moving and uncertain situations, many leaders face questions, and all of you are leaders, of course, that you may not even have answers to. You need to communicate early and often with your key stakeholders through the crisis, even though you still do not understand the extent of the problem or of the consequences that will come later on. Still, you need to be honest and open to maintain credibility and approach the situation with empathy. You need to put yourself in your constituents' shoes to understand their anxiety. You're anxious, but they are anxious as well. So you will sometimes get it right. Hopefully a number of times you will get it right, but you will also often get it wrong. Don't worry. This is a time where people are being very, very generous. Everyone is figuring it out as we go. And even though you may get it wrong, it is still better to give it a try and be as transparent as you possibly can. Research actually shows that many managers often try to communicate significantly less during crisis, which is the complete contrary to what is best practice. As I said, ideally, you should be communicating right now. It is critical to communicate effectively with your staff, with your clients, with the media, with investors. That does not mean you should over-communicate, but communicate in a balanced, well-thought and strategic way. Precise, timely, and relevant information is critical during this crisis or during any crisis for the sake. Take some time to think strategically and beware of actionism. So the contrary of being strategic, just doing something for the sake of doing something. Always think of the benefit you're bringing to your audience. Have that in mind when you act and when you communicate. Make sure you feel calm when you make decisions. And this is hard during a crisis. You also need to exude calmness. You need to look calm. This is true for any media. Of course, video, of course, audio, but believe it or not, even written communication. People feel the anxiety. So this is something I concentrate on a lot. Take a breath before going on public. Take a breath before writing something. Center yourself and come from there. People are relying on you right now to be the steward in the calm before a lot of things that are going wrong everywhere in the world. The biggest challenge is managing outsiders who may share misleading information, which may end up damaging your company's reputation. Therefore, as I said, effective, precise communication is critical, whether it's inside the organization or to the general public. Let me share with you a little bit of the mechanics. I'm gonna send out this slide later on a little bit as a checklist for all of you to have later on, and I'd just like you to have a glance at it. And I'm going to go through these 9 points one by one in a little bit more detail. So I'm going to go out of this right now. Hold on. The technical side is always a challenge. Okay, here we go. The mechanics. Appoint a crisis communications response team. If you don't already have that, this is the time to do that. Designate speakers and roles for the task force, as well as schedules for keeping the task force informed. I know a number of you are young entrepreneurs, and it's nice to be hip and to be very creative and spontaneous. That's great, but this is not the time to be hip and relaxed about structure when you're communicating. Structure will help you to keep things in your hands as best as possible. Ideally, these teams should be small. Of course, your companies are small as it is, but so 3 to 5 people, at the very most 7. It could be that your entire company is 7, then of course you don't need to have everyone involved. The one person who should be involved for sure is the leadership, so the top CEO or the founder. And make sure that all of you who are rather introverts, oftentimes founders of these startups are very analytical people, rather introverted. This is still the time for you to rise up and go out there. even if it's hard. But just because it's hard, it will make it even more credible to the outside world. Make sure you have a clear line of communication and responsibilities are clear. I'll get into that a little bit later, and you will understand why this is so important. So as I said, have a structure, which means A, meet regularly to monitor the situation closely as it continues to evolve. A number of times you will not have anything new, but still you need to be on it to continue looking at it. B, or second, be the main source of information about the crisis. Have dedicated channels and persons to go out with the messages. This will build credibility and avoid confusion with recipients. So if you have one person who's always the spokesperson, or the one right channel that you're using all the time, people know that this is the place to go to. When you start having a number of different ones, people don't know which one is the newest, which one is the accurate one. On social media, you need to respond fast. Make sure you still are careful and maintain form and cleanliness in your message. Again, I'm from a different generation than most of you are, and I probably use different language. That being said, still maintain a certain formality. Be transparent, explain what you know, and also explain what you don't know, and give your sources of information. Be succinct. What does that mean? Write or speak in a way that can be easily understood. People are stressed enough with a number of other things right now. Give them easy, simple language, short sentences. One of my mother tongues is German, and Germans love to have huge sentences. Please try not to do that. I believe French is similar. Sentences are complicated and long. Make them short. Use 12-year-old language if need must be, but this will ensure that your message is well conveyed. For those of you who are the humorous type, that's really great. It keeps up the spirit, but when you're doing these serious communications, this is not the time to have jokes. Use them for another time. I'll come to this later, but some of you might have virtual coffee time, and there you can for sure make jokes if you'd like. Consider video as a response by the primary spokesperson to give it a more human touch. People are on edge right now. Being human is what we all need. For this, it is imperative that you have, and this again comes to what I do as my main job, a good appearance. So don't do it in your pajamas, please. And that you're congruent in the message, the tone, and your facial expression. I actually watched a video not long ago on Tuesday or Wednesday on the TED community, and they were interviewing Bill Gates, who I respect a lot, but he was having a very strange smile all the time when talking about the pandemic. Try to be very appropriate in your facial expression, and it should be conveying exactly the same that you're conveying in your message, and the tone of voice is the same. That goes to say, be aware of emotions. This is a time when stress is prevalent for you guys, for everybody else around you. People are stressed about what comes from the outside. Some people live alone and are stressed about being alone because they miss the community. So you need to be very aware of their situation so that you can lower the probability of messages being misconstructed or interpreted. Make sure you address people's circumstances, as I said earlier, in an empathic way. Express concern with affected people. Hopefully you won't have any, but if you do, please express that concern and try not to come off as insensitive or uncaring. This will also protect your brand. Try to have a structured message. Describe the situation. So what is happening, and of course we all know what is happening, but also how it is affecting your company. What has happened to your company as a consequence of this? And be honest about what is happening. Then have a high level of details that you know, and you probably don't know everything. You can also say all of what you don't know. What are you doing about it? This relates both to what you're doing about people and also what you're doing about your processes and your products and how you're going to market all of these different things. And what you will continue to do. Oh, I guess I'm not sharing the screen. Apologies. Where am I? Here we go. Describe the situation. Okay, what happened to your company as a consequence? What high-level details you know? What are you doing about it? What will you continue to do? And how will you inform? So let them know what's coming next so that people can have an expectation of what to do next. Apologies, I had forgotten to share the prior slide. There we go. This one. So you will all receive all of these slides later on. Apologies. So meet regularly, be the main source of information, have dedicated channels and persons to go to with the message. Maintain form and cleanliness in your message. Give regular updates to the key stakeholders where needed. Be as transparent as possible. So say what you know, say what you don't know, and give people your sources. Write or speak in a way that can be easily understood, simple sentences. Be congruent in message, tone, facial expression. Be aware of emotions. And as I said, number 10, have a structured message. Now, broadly speaking, you will have two levels of stakeholders, internal stakeholders and external stakeholders. Let's start with the internal stakeholders. Your internal stakeholders, here we go, are your employees. They are the most important part of your community right now. Apologies. Here we go. Need to flip over to one side and the other side. The better you communicate with your employees, the more they can spread the correct information on your company. And so avoid misleading and wrong information. You want to be proactive in communicating because otherwise rumors start circulating and you don't want that to happen. You want to be the go-to source of the information about everything that's happening, whether it's home office, whether it's any people that are sick, anything that may be happening in your company right now because of the crisis, you want to be the go-to. I don't know if you remember that game that we played as children where you would whisper a first sentence that came to the next and to the next and to the next. If you're not the one controlling the information, that is what will happen. And if you remember the game, the last one to have the information had something completely different from what the very first one said. So you need to communicate with one and the same message all the time through all the channels. That being said, that same message is also the message that you will convey to any of your other stakeholders, to which we will come later on. But of course, you will adapt the message depending on who your audience is. Employees can be most productive when they feel informed and reassured that come what may, they're in good hands. This comes back to you being calm when you're conveying your messages. And they can concentrate on their work and family life, which probably for some of them is stressful right now, rather than search for information or check whether it's true or not. So establish yourself as a trusted source of information and make sure the channel is incorruptible, so no one is putting other stuff in. You cannot underestimate how important it is to hear the voice of the leader, whether it's live or through email, podcast, social media, whatever it is you choose to do. Post your information regularly and visible. This can be, as I said, the company intranet, email, social media. It's probably better to have push notification if you can right now, so people don't have to make any extra effort to go and search for information in order to stay informed. I know in the United States, there's something that actually you get SMSs when there's an emergency in the region. They don't even, I mean, I don't know if you have this for your people, Probably not, but they don't even have your phone number. They have all of the phone numbers in a particular region. They can send it out to everyone. This doesn't apply to your smaller companies, of course, but think of something that potentially can be pushed, particularly if it's very, very urgent. Make sure to choose all the right channels so that you can reach all of your employees. So think about people who are on the field and maybe do not have Wi-Fi. Maybe for them, it's easier to receive SMS. For other people, maybe they have very weak Wi-Fi because they're in the countryside. Maybe people use Ethernet and are not on either SMS or Wi-Fi when they're out and about. Even though we're all supposed to be homebound right now, some people go out of their home for a walk, things like that. So think about the people who also work on the field. As Amélie told you, I worked in energy for a long time. So we have the grid, we have people on the cable lines, and these people don't have a computer all the time. So make sure that whatever message you're conveying is available to them as well. You may even want to go old-fashioned with a business telephone hotline with a recorded message on it, and to allow voice messages to be left, or use new technologies and means and ways to get together, such as the Zoom that we're using today, WebEx, Skype, Teams. I'm not here to make advertisement for any of them, but every company uses different ones. Choose the one that works best for you. We are experiencing a sense of urgency and belonging. People are needing this. I hear many of you dial into this call once a day because it's a fixture in the day. Maybe you can make that for your people as well. And people feel like pioneers coming into this, and they often do this in crisis situations. I was there on September 11th, and we all felt that we wanted to help. So they're more open to innovative ways, and they're also more forgiving to work in ways that don't always work perfectly. Using mobile devices is a good way to keep all employees informed, even those who work on the field. But as I said, please always remember that not all employees are desk-bound. And these people who are on the field right now, while many of us have the luxury and the privilege of doing home office, do not have that privilege. Appreciate what they're doing. Let them know that you support and appreciate what they're doing. Be empathic with them. It must be more stressful than ever for them right now. Describe how you've made decisions about issues such as travel restrictions, working from home, these type of things. People want to understand why you make one decision in one direction and not the other. Communicate no less than every 2 days, ideally maybe every day. Try to make it maybe at the same time every day. Again, as I said, structure is your aid right now. Try to provide timely information rather than waiting until you know all the answers. So for right now, nobody knows all the answers. They're talking to experts and they don't know all the answers. So it's completely normal that you will not know all the answers. Go out with what you know. And if what you have is nothing, but you've said that you would communicate every day at a certain time, come out and explain why you don't have anything. And again, go back to reassuring people that you're on the ball. I know this sounds a little counterintuitive to what I said in terms of don't be just an actionism type of, oh, I want to get out and I want to do something. But if you've established a schedule, don't skip the schedule, because that again also gives people a sense of why was the schedule now skipped. Again, think of what people may be thinking or feeling in that moment. If you're using social media, use the feedback you get from social media and monitor it. If you decide to react, again, do it in a structured manner, not just randomly. Don't answer just because the emotion came in that moment. People may be answering or criticizing certain things. Don't take it personally, please. Take it in and constructively add to what they have come. Be proactive, try to anticipate their reactions, but don't be defensive. Give employees the feeling that the company is in control of the situation, allowing them to feel informed and valued. Don't bash anybody, please. not your employees, not politicians, not competitors. This is not the time. So you probably hear a lot of people asking questions of whose fault it is. Did it come from this country? Did it go there? Did we act on time? Did we not? All of this analysis needs to be done absolutely and for most sure. This is not the moment to be talking about that. This is the moment to get through the crisis as successful as you can. Everybody needs to survive in a successful way. This is your task as a leader, to get your company through safely. Once you have overcome the crisis successfully, you will need to go back and do the analysis, of course, and then maintain both then and right now your composure and keep calm. Assure your stakeholders, particularly your employees, that you will do all of what you need to do later on, but only once you have successfully emerged from the situation at hand. I'm coming back to a note for home office. Try to make sure you keep the spirit up. And you can do that by having informal type of meetings. So I know of companies that have a morning and evening meeting, just very brief, 15 to 20 minutes, but it kind of sets the book ends on both sides and people have a bit more of a structure. I hear from companies that particularly the people who are single and alone at home are feeling the need to connect even more so than those of you who have families, oddly enough, because those of you who have families are having some social context, whereas the others may not even have any social context. Some other companies are doing virtual coffee time, virtual lunch time, so people actually do take their glasses and sit together and have a chat informally of what's going on outside of work. Or you can do all three of them, but give people that level of connection so that the isolation does not affect employees that much. Okay, let me now come to external stakeholders. For you, those are probably in the very first place customers, for those of you who are already market mature. Customers require a different approach than employees, given that companies do not have the same access nor frequency with those stakeholders. So focus again on what is important to the customer. Provide relief when possible. Think of win-win ways of resolving issues such as cancellations and delays. I'm of course having cancellations, as many of you are, and by my general rules of cancellation, probably many of the cancellations are too short-term and they should be paying. So try to look for solutions such as delaying and scheduling now for the second half of the year, getting maybe half the payment now that binds you with your customer and at the same time gives them leeway, but it doesn't cut your liquidity completely off, and it's a halfway meeting customers rather than sticking to the rules just for the sake of it right now. This will build goodwill and create a positive branding. I'm not suggesting you use this as a marketing opportunity in a ruthless way, but I invite you to use good communication the right way, which may not only deter damage, but even have this upside. You've seen airlines allowing people to change their flights, even though the tariffs that you have chosen do not allow you to. Things like that will buy you goodwill at this point in time. You probably go to trade fairs and live meetings to promote your company. That's not possible right now. So this is the time to keep your website or your Facebook appearance or your LinkedIn appearance very clean and updated, because that's where people will go to look at what's happening in your company. You can provide your customers with updates through these means. You don't need to be as proactive there unless you have a burning platform there right now. I just received an invitation this morning from a startup I am very close to. They invited me to join their newsletter, which they've just started doing as we came into the crisis, because they cannot see people in any other fashion right now. Be aware of data protection matters though. If you send out a broad email to people, these should be emails that you're allowed to be using, of course. And then maybe you ask people if they want to subscribe rather than have them subscribed already, and then they can subscribe to your newsletter. But it's a good proactive way to go out to companies and to your customers so that you can stay there. And then bring relevant information to them about product development, business development, information on the industry overall, things like that. So I worked, for instance, on a project on development of smart cities. And we just got together last Monday to gauge how this project that has been planned for a longer time already is relevant to the current situation, or how we can make it relevant to the current situation. It's a project on health and well-being in smaller and medium-sized cities. And of course, it very much attaches to what's going on right now. Still, we added some programs into the project, like starting to have more information about what's happening right now, how people are feeling, what type of needs they have, and how we can implement those in our projects better, because we didn't have this type of a crisis, luckily, before. And so now we're gaining information from this. And again, when I say these things, I mean them in the most positive way possible. You're not being ruthless about it, but you're making the best out of the situation to use it into your product. Focus on empathy rather than trying to create selling opportunities. Companies should rethink advertising and promotion strategies to be more in line with the current zeitgeist. This is what I mean when I say keep the transparency, be proactive, but of course, don't be ruthless about what you're doing. And again, here too, transparency and a calm demeanor can get you a long way in protecting your company's reputation. Also, one of the things that, for instance, a German company did, where the first cases of this virus started, the company is called Webasto, and they're in southern Germany. Of course, they were the very first ones to have infected people. They sent everyone into quarantine immediately, and they sent everyone into testing immediately. They shut down operations immediately. They didn't wait for the authorities to do things. They did things immediately. And of course, at the time, they were the very first ones to be on the spotlight here in Germany. We're long past that, unfortunately. But in having been that, it was reported a lot about them. They got a lot of goodwill with all of their employees because it was reported, and because they also had to go to all of the people that are their clients. The clients got a lot of goodwill on them for doing this, for acting fast, for doing the right thing. And of course, their name was out in the public because even the media was reporting on them in a very positive way, not because we were doing marketing, but because they were doing the right thing. Investors are another stakeholder that is outside for you. And for those of you who are listed companies, I don't know how many of you are, probably not that many, but of course there you need to make sure that you abide by insider information. You need to have ad hoc information going out immediately if you're informing anything else to any other stakeholders. That probably doesn't apply for you, but I think those of you who are listed know what I'm talking about. Otherwise, communicate the impact of the crisis on your operations as far as you can gauge them right now. And many of you will not be able to gauge them right now, but at least inform people of what you're doing and what your near-term challenges are. If you say you have 0 challenges, it's unlikely and you lose credibility. Don't hide anything. Reinforce the company's strategy, the product, the business models, the benefits, etc., and see perhaps how this can apply to what is happening. So to come back to that interview with Bill Gates, he was saying the other day that he thinks that at some point in time, people will need to have, just as we have right now, little certificates, almost little passports that show whether you're inoculated with a certain virus. those of you who do blockchain, maybe you want to start thinking about what that will do. I'm not here to do your product and company development. I know very little about blockchain, but this might be a moment to start thinking about things. And that shows that you're actually also proactively using this time. So what you're doing about the problem right now and what you're planning, although it is planning in uncertainty, of course. Any other external stakeholders are probably authorities, regulators, health authorities. Make sure you're transparent and open and collaborative with them. Hiding things will come to haunt you later, so please don't do that. Work with them to the best of your current ability. And to the best of your current ability today may be different than it was prior to the crisis, may be different from what it will be in a couple of weeks because you're prepared in a different way, but do your best at being as open and transparent as possible. So in conclusion, when dealing with uncertainty, leaders need to look at communication from the perspective of your audience and have empathy for them rather than fear of doing the wrong thing. This requires you to communicate when you don't have all the information, to reveal as much as you can about sensitive information, and to be vigilant about correcting mistakes. As I said, they will happen. Just try to correct them without worrying about the repercussions. This is a time when we're all a lot more generous in making mistakes because we're all in the same situation. Try not to view all communication as negative and as a burden. As I told you about this, the Buster company, it can actually even work in your favor, and it's an opportunity to keep in touch with a number of your constituents. Use the opportunity as best as possible. Internal communication is crucial in this time to keep employees informed and safe. Later, most probably, external communications and how your company has been affected and what your plans are and will be just as important. And unfortunately, my view, I don't mean to be negative, I'm usually a very positive person and I know we will master things, but after the health crisis, it's going to take a little while until things get economically, politically, socially back to normal. So be prepared to continue with that type of information and communication. Okay, use your time wisely right now as you're going through the crisis to start planning into what may come then after we come out of this enclosed crisis. That's it from my part in terms of what I would like to tell you. Best of success to all of you. Stay healthy and stay active. And thank you so much for being here. And I open this now, Amélie, to your questions, and go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, Constance. I'd like to ask you a question first, and maybe you can think about it while you answer the other one, and you can come back on it afterward if you want. The question has been asked by different CEOs, and we have this comment regarding the fact that the people would love to have some more specific insights regarding their situation of startup manager.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? You were breaking up and I couldn't really...
We have received different comments regarding the fact that the participant would love to have some more specific insights for CEOs of very small startups.
Okay, so this is for CEOs of very small companies who would like to have more specific insights. Have I understood that correct? Okay.
Yes, it is.
Your companies are very, very small, and depending on what the maturity of your company was, you're either already in the market and have customers, and probably those relationships are severe right now, or you're even earlier stage, and then the question is, how are you doing with your development or even with getting seed capital right now, where maybe capital is flowing into different directions? You don't know the answers to any of this right now. But I think you need to be fair to anyone that you're communicating, and it's going to be your partners that you're either developing products with or that you're running pilots with. Let them know that you're going through difficult times. Let them know that you're going through difficult times though, and what you're doing about it. So ideally, you're being proactive in rethinking what your strategy can be. If you're not getting the seed capital that you need to be getting, for instance, what are your alternatives to it? What other type of things can you do in the meantime? If you're not being able to run your pilots, are you doing some of the things that you can do in closed offices right now where you're not communicating with one another? So go back to the root of why you came together as a company to start with, and to all of the other things that you need to be doing, and reprioritize potentially some of the things that you need to be doing right now. And if it's only you alone and you're having a very hard time as a founder being alone, see if you can do more of what we're doing right now. Get into networks and ask other people what their experience has been. Share those experiences and use that in order to go outside if you need to talk to either, as I said, your investors, your partners, your accelerators, anyone who is working with you, and ask for help. It is completely legitimate to ask for help. I would say that it's a lot more credible to go and ask for help right now than to say, I'm fine, I'm dealing with everything. It's much harder to believe that that is true. I don't know if that helps. Let me know.
Yes, I think it does. You have Nadej Suer who asks, vielen Dank, Constance, für diese Konferenz.
Sehr gerne.
Fine for empathy with all counterparts, fine for structured speech on current consequences. How can I keep on doing business and try to negotiate next missions for 2020 without looking too opportunistic?
I think it's fair to say that you're looking at the situation, but that you deem that you will come out of the situation well, and that you deem that your partners and your customers will come out of the situation well, and that you don't know what the time frame will be when you will reassume a normal operation. But it's fair to think that probably, I don't know, in a couple of weeks, we will be able to all reassume all of our operations, and that you would like to plan because it gives you a sense of normalcy, and probably they have a sense of normalcy as well. So I recently saw, and it was a large company, but still they announced that they had just done cooperation with another larger company. And when I read it, my first reaction was, how can they be doing this? But then I thought, actually, it is a good thing to give a sense of normalcy, of we trust that we will continue to operate later on. So this is where storytelling, and I mean it in the most positive way, not inventing stories, not, as I said, being ruthless, but using the moment and saying, how can I help? Would it be of your help? And genuinely trying to help. I think most companies that come to being because they have a product and something that is needed in society, and you're fulfilling that need. So if you come out with a genuine idea of how can I help? How can I help you stay focused on your operations and on my operations, and let's continue thinking about how we can do this project, or how I can help with my service or product. I think it's completely legitimate to do that. If you're misusing pricing, if you're misusing timing, if you're misusing somebody's lack of liquidity right now, that's a very different type of thing. But I would dare to assume that most people right now are using much goodwill to do the best they can. And if you come with that attitude, again, to go into a dialogue and listen more to find new solutions that can work for both, I think it's completely legitimate, and I encourage you to do it, because we can't stop the world. The more we completely stop, the more difficult it is going to be for all of us to get back running later on. So if you use all of that as part of your story, it's completely legitimate, in my view at least.
Yes, I think it's a very positive message to say that we have to care about our clients and to have a dialogue with them. There is another question on the same subject. While we are being generous and, of course, listening to our clients and somehow rebuilding the relationship with them, how can you go back to normal invoicing? Like, how can you communicate to some basic business things with them in the same time?
Yeah, so as part of normal business, really, you would have to issue an invoice for a service already rendered. And unless there's a reason, I mean, particularly if you've already rendered the service or the product, it's completely legitimate and normal to invoice the company that received your product. If they have problems, they will most likely come back to you and say, we're having liquidity problems, we're having working capital problems, whatever it is they're facing. And then you may need to start thinking about a solution. That solution can be to accept partial payments, and that's more of a strategic question. I know you had a session on finances the other day. That's more of a strategic question, which I cannot really resolve for you with communication. What I can encourage you to do is to have the dialogue and to not just be very hard in saying, nope, that's it, and otherwise you're in default. Because really, you could be in a similar situation later on too, and you don't want that happening. And we also, none of us want that happening. So we are really facing what all of those contracts call force majeure. This is force majeure. So try to engage in a dialogue. Likewise, other companies will send you invoice most likely for services and products rendered to you. And you would normally have to pay for them unless there's a good reason not to. If there is a good reason not to, talk to them. Talk to them and explain what it is. So again, I come back to this one example that I had myself. I was supposed to give a seminar today. It was canceled 1.5 weeks ago. Normally, my cancellation policy is that if you cancel less than a month in advance, you have to pay for the product or for the seminar for 50%. And I talked to them, and I could have just invoiced them the 50%, sure. But I thought it's better to have a good conversation with them. And how can I resolve this in a way that the good relationship that I have with them is maintained, while at the same time I don't suffer because I have liquidity that I need to cover, of course. I went to them and I said, before I issue the invoice, I wanted to talk to you. According to the general terms and conditions, I have the right to issue an invoice for 50%. You've also already said that you want to reschedule to the second half of the year. How about we do both? We issue the invoice for 50%, we reschedule for the second half of the year, and when we realize the seminar in the second half of the year, I will only charge you half of it. So at the end of the day, they're not paying more than they needed to pay. I'm not getting less than I would have gotten, but it relieves me a little bit in my liquidity. It doesn't burden them as much in their liquidity. And it ensures for me that I keep in touch with the customer and that I will have an opportunity to see them and deliver my service in the second half of the year. Now, that's a solution I found. Is it the only solution? Is it the perfect solution? Probably not. But think about these type of negotiation solutions of where you can find a middle ground that is a win-win for everyone, that keeps the dialogue going with your customers, that allows for the liquidity and the burden to be shared 50-50, these type of things.
Yes, and entrepreneurs are very good at being pragmatic and empathetic, and so it seems like a great answer. Also, we have a question of Gregory. He asked if it's too early or inappropriate to speak about the solutions and essential business he could offer his clients once the coronavirus is past.
No, I don't think it's too early. I think it shows your proactivity. Most probably, I don't know what it is you do or what it is you sell. Most probably you won't have a finished product as it is right now. And what you're saying is, again, going back to this, how can I help? How can we make this in such a way that we all ensure that we will live later on? So you can start developing prototypes, you can continue with the dialogue, so that this dialogue allows you in turn to develop the product so that it will be ready then. And probably most of you are Agile and Scrum and all of these things anyway, and in always beta modus. So you can start developing a beta now and use, actually, I think it's a good idea to use all of this information that we have. We're having a lot of data out there, and it's an opportunity to use the data. And again, taking advantage of an opportunity is not a bad thing overall, as long as you're not screwing anyone. And as long as you're being understanding of what is happening in their environment. That's what it's about. So it's not about stopping and not doing anything and paralyzing. It's about understanding and expressing that understanding and finding solutions that will build you credibility, goodwill, good brand, a good reputation, and of course, maybe make your relationships with your customers, with your investors, with everybody more secure and stronger. So I don't think it's too premature. I think it's a very good timing, particularly if they are coming to you to ask, perfect, or if you've recognized that there is an opportunity because you can help them with something, because their operations right now are in a particular situation where your product or service can help them enhance that, particularly in a time of difficulty, absolutely, by all means, go into it. As long as, again, as I said, not screwing them, please.
Sorry, I will just translate a minute in French as the question was asked in French. Donc la question c'était, pouvons-nous d'ores et déjà prendre la parole sur nos solutions qui pourront accompagner commerçants à la reprise ou faut-il attendre la sortie de cette crise? Et la réponse en bref de Constance, c'est ce n'est pas trop tôt. A priori, le produit, la solution ne sera pas finie, mais il est idéal de la co-construire avec vos clients dès maintenant pour qu'ils soient prêts à temps. C'est aussi une bonne idée parce que cela vous aidera à consolider une bonne image de marque et votre crédibilité en face de vos clients. So I think I summed it up. Now, we had another question about the tools and the channels, maybe social media. On what interface do you actually advise that they communicate and share with their clients? Is it, of course, maybe not mass mailing, but what channel do you recommend first?
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you're asking this and also addressing the mass mailing. So be careful, depending on how important your information is. A number of these mass mails end up in spam. So you guys are a lot more tech savvy than I am, but I still receive a lot of spam that shouldn't be going into my spam because it's sent to a very large number of email addresses. It ends up in there. So be careful with that. Use whatever technology you need to use so that it doesn't end in spam if you use email. In terms of the social media, I personally find, and it depends, of course, on your product or service, but I personally find that things like LinkedIn are a lot more professional for your services and for your products than going onto Facebook. Yes, if you're in fast-moving consumer goods or in industries that are more on the consumer side, maybe Facebook is the place to go. But when you're on the B2B side, I would use more social networks like LinkedIn. There's a level of seriousness into them, I believe, and it's a good way to broadcast messages. And you, on the one hand, push it to your contacts, so you have an opportunity for that to go wider. On the other hand, if people need to know something about you, they can search for you and they can have a pull notification as well. So that's what I would probably suggest more. And again, make sure that you have 1 or 2 designated people so that it is clear that you are communicating for your company. So what I've been observing, all of the things that come on WhatsApp, there's a mixture of things that are true and not true and semi-true. And I haven't seen much in LinkedIn that makes me question whether it is true or not. There's something about that one being more serious than others in terms of what information gets posted. I believe all of us are just more conscious maybe in going in there. That's my advice. I don't know in your country or for your particular industry whether there are other channels similar to LinkedIn, those type of social media that you can use. I mean, you can use with your employees WhatsApp if you have WhatsApp groups, or you oftentimes have not the very small companies, but the larger companies, Yelp or some of these intra-company Facebook type of social media, you can use those as well for your employees if you have that. But for customers, I would probably use either email or those type of more professional networks.
Perfect. Maybe we ask a last question. You have a lot of thank you messages on the Q&A and Converser.
Thank you.
It's a question from Nathalie Uterardo. She thanks you first, and then she asks, when we know when the confinement will be ended, can we actually have more communications, more commercial communications, as we actually have jobs to save, and it's hard to work 100% on solidarity, even though we want to, because we also have people working for us that we have to pay and to keep their job.
Yeah. So again, I would say yes. Yes. So try to get back into business as usual. Doing business is not a bad thing. And let's all not believe that making money and doing business and making marketing and having a great product and making people aware of your product is a bad thing. None of those are bad things. All of these are good things. What is terrible is to squeeze out people when they're in bad situations, as we're all experiencing right now. So yes, once this is lifted, hopefully very soon, but we don't know. Once this is lifted, you will go out and start doing business as usual, as best as possible. And when you do, you will ask for your regular prices, and you will ask for all of these things that you've been doing up until we started having this big crisis. And then you might need to come back into certain discussions, which may or may not lead to decisions. And those will be decisions that you then have to make. So just to paint a scenario, you deliver something and you issue the invoice, and people come back and say, I can't pay you because of the crisis, we've suffered too much. Then you need to decide yourself, do I accept partial payment? Do I accept no payment at all? And you're suggesting, no, I cannot do any of this. At some point, I need to do business because I also need to pay my people. Absolutely taken. And then you have to decide that, unfortunately, certain people you cannot deliver to anymore. So yes, you're not doing anything wrong in asking for what is legitimate. It's taking too much advantage of people. That's the type of thing that I, of course, ask you not to do. I would assume that most of you wouldn't do that, but it's completely legitimate to go back to as normal a business as possible. So I don't know about you, but I'm not paying less for my electricity right now. I'm not paying less for my phone right now. I'm not doing any of these things right now. And I don't think, I'm grateful that all of that is working. But none of them are telling me, hey, there's a crisis. And granted, many of these people do have people working on part-time and all of these different things. So it's, legitimately, I'm receiving their product and I'm using it, so I need to pay for it. And unfortunately, the day that I suffer too much, which hopefully will not come, I may decide that I cannot have the 1000 megabit internet, but the 200 megabit, and I may need to do that. But then it's business as usual, and that's what we need to do. So don't worry about that. It's a matter of also your spirit. You know, in America, we speak a lot about the spirit of how we do things. And your spirit is one of doing fair business and of keeping your business and your employees afloat and your investors afloat. It's not the moment to be overzealous about doing business, but it's also not the moment to put everyone on the street. No one is helped with that either.
Thank you, Constance. We have a very last question. Can you hear me well this time?
I can hear you well.
Yes, okay. Laurent is asking us something, and what is interesting is that he's telling us we communicate with our audience through Instagram, posting challenges, promoting our services like delivery services, exactly as we did before the COVID. I wonder if they should still, you have part answered it, but I think it's interesting to come back on it. Should we communicate as we used to do it before, or should we have to adapt our communication to it? And his question is, I heard your guideline, but would you have any specific and additional B2C comments to share?
Okay, so unfortunately, Amélie, I again couldn't hear you fully, but your question is, I believe, Laurent, that you already communicate via Instagram and you have a B2C business and you've continued communicating exactly the same way that you communicated prior to the crisis starting. And so should you continue doing that, or do you need to change something? And you post challenges and you get people involved through Instagram, which is great. So if nothing has changed for you with that, carry on, do it. Again, as much normalcy as we can have, the better. And I mean, if you can use that channel to help over and beyond what you're doing, if you can maybe even put a light onto what you're doing and how this is enhancing community and how this is helping people, by all means, use it. And use it even more so. I don't know what your service or product is, but let's just say you're, I don't know, a company that delivers food to the home. Make sure that you continue doing that and that you see what service, that you show to other people what service you're providing to the community, and maybe even get ideas of how you can do that even better. So it's absolutely perfect to continue doing this. If you're not doing anything wrong, there's no reason why you should stop doing it. As I said earlier, yes, we're living in a crisis and we should all stay at home and we need to stay healthy and help the authorities do what they need to be doing. But we also help the authorities and our entire world a lot in continuing to have a level of normalcy that keeps businesses alive and that keeps society alive and that keeps the economy alive. So if it's working for you, and if the crisis is helping you generate more business and you're not screwing anyone by doing that, but it's the nature of the business, by all means, do it. So let's just say Amazon probably is having more business than ever right now. Is it wrong? Well, no. Would it be wrong if they then start charging crazy prices or asking for people to do weird things to blackmail you? Yes, that would be horrible. Would it be terrible if they start advertising, thank you, coronavirus, because our business is booming? Of course, that would be horrible. But is it okay for them to be doing a good job? Of course. Zoom just yesterday, if you have the free version, you only have 40 minutes for anything that you do with more than 2 people. And I had gotten into a conversation with people and we were at the 40 minutes and they sent me a little thing that said, we're lifting the 40-minute restriction. And then I finished that call and they gave me another one and said, if you schedule another one right away, we will lift the 40-minute restriction for you again. There's nothing wrong with that. Thank you very much. You're giving me something more. And I'm sure all of these companies, Zoom and Cisco Systems and all of them, they will be booming probably. I'm not making any investment suggestions here, please, but they will be booming because all of us recognize the value that is in them. Are they giving us a good service? Yes, they are. Are we using the service? Yes, we are. Is there something wrong with that? No. Are they making use of the great situation that they're in, that we're all using it to make it more attractive, to promote it even more? Yes, they are. But I don't think there's anything wrong with it as long as they continue to provide us with a good service and as long as they're not making us suffer in any way, shape, or form. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Constance. It actually helps a lot. We wanted, of course, to thank you for this webinar. I think it has been helping a lot of entrepreneurs. They actually say you thank you on the side. Unfortunately, we didn't have the time to cover all the questions, but we will definitely share with you after the webinar the presentation of Constance and maybe a link to be introduced to her. So don't hesitate. Thank you, everyone. Merci à tous. Sachez qu'on va vous partager la présentation de Constance par mail à la suite de ce webinaire, ainsi que la vidéo de ce webinaire. Donc, n'hésitez pas à poser les questions qu'on n'a pas pu poser entre-temps. Voilà, merci beaucoup à tous. Merci beaucoup, Constance. Et on te remercie de la part de tout le réseau Village, du Village Paris et du Hub Luxembourg. Amélie voulait te remercier également. Sa connexion, malheureusement, est en train de sauter. Donc voilà, elle te passe le message par écrit. Merci beaucoup et à très bientôt alors.
Merci à vous et merci à tout le monde. Bonne chance et stay healthy. Stay healthy and keep the spirit up.
Thank you, Constance. Bye.
Au revoir.